They left their weeks-old newborn daughter at orphanage. Usually when a baby is born, parents are the happiest and excited. But when Iris was born, everyone made faces. What could have been the reason? Stay with us as the story unfolds. And before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The hospital room fell silent, the kind of heavy quiet that makes you hold your breath. Dr. Violet gently rocked the newborn girl, whose soft curls framed her face like wisps of cloud. To the doctor, she was precious, but the parents standing before her didn't seem to share that joy. Amber and Jackson exchanged panicked glances, their faces twisted as if they'd bitten into something bitter. Amber's hands shook as she reached out, then pulled back. "Doctor, is our baby? Is she okay?" Her voice cracked like thin ice. Dr. Violet adjusted her glasses, choosing her words carefully. "Let me assure you," she said with a warm but cautious smile, "your daughter is completely healthy. She's just unique, special in her own beautiful way." Amber and Jackson couldn't look away, but not for the usual reasons. Their baby girl's face was puffy, her skin marked with strange blotches, her tiny fingers curled in an unusual way. This wasn't the picture-perfect newborn they'd imagined proudly presenting to family and friends. When the nurses handed them the discharge papers, Amber and Jackson moved stiffly, their faces blank. No smiles, no happy tears, just quiet, clipped answers as they signed form after form. Amber gripped the stroller like it was filled with rocks instead of their sleeping daughter. Jackson leaned close, his voice low and urgent. "Let's just get out of here." His eyes darted around the hospital lobby as if he expected someone to stop them. The house felt different now, cold and quiet, like all the joy had been sucked out of it. The nursery, once so cheerful with its pink walls and rows of stuffed animals, now seemed hollow. Amber placed the baby's carrier on the floor without even glancing inside. She turned to Jackson, her voice shaky. "What do we do?" Her fingers twisted together nervously. We can't let anyone see her like this. What will people think?" Jackson didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, then turned and walked out. Leaving Amber alone with the baby neither of them wanted to hold. For days they went through the motions, changing diapers, preparing bottles, but never cuddling her close or whispering sweet lullabies. While other parents proudly announced their baby's name, this little girl remained unnamed, unwanted. Then, on a frosty night, Amber and Jackson did the unthinkable. The car tires crunched on gravel as they pulled up to the orphanage gates. With trembling hands, they placed the sleeping bundle on the cold steps, along with a hastily scribbled note, "Please give her the life we can't." They drove away without even a goodbye, never looking back. Little did they know the daughter they rejected would one day return to their lives in a way they could never imagine. Life at the orphanage wasn't kind to the little girl. The other children called her Clumsy and Squinty, their cruel nicknames sticking like glue. But then came Miss Kelly, the kind of grown-up who really sees children. One day she swept the girl into a warm hug and said, "Oh, my sweet child, you're absolutely full of magic. When you smile, it's like watching fireworks burst across the night sky. And your heart? More colorful than every crayon in the box put together." It was Miss Kelly who gave her the name Iris. "Because," she explained, brushing the girl's hair gently, "your smile lights up the whole room and your deep hazel eyes are really mesmerizing to just keep on staring at." Iris grew tougher with each passing year, like a little sapling bending but never breaking in the wind. When kids said, "You can't do that," Zrinya, she'd them wrong. Night after night she practiced writing until her shaky lines became graceful loops and curves. While others played soccer, clever Iris invented new games where her differences didn't matter. Soon she was the undefeated queen of hopscotch and the fastest shadow tag player in the yard. But even the bravest hearts get bruised. One rainy afternoon, a new girl named Haley arrived. The moment Haley saw Iris's face, her eyes went wide. "A monster!" she shrieked, scrambling backward so fast she nearly fell. The words hit Iris like a slap. She fled to the bathroom, choking back sobs as she slid down against the floor. Miss Kelly found Iris curled up in the bathroom corner. Without a word, she wrapped Iris in a hug so warm and tight, like a shield. For that moment, nothing else existed, just Miss Kelly's arms around her, steady and safe. Then, in that gentle voice Iris knew so well, Miss Kelly whispered, "Iris, my love, what's the one thing I always tell you?" Iris sniffled, rubbing her teary face with her sleeve. That real beauty comes from the inside." Miss Kelly cupped Iris's face in her hands, her eyes shining. "Yes, and you, my brave girl, have the most beautiful heart and eyes I've ever known." From that day on, Iris made a promise to herself. No matter how a new child stared or flinched when they first saw her, she would be the first to welcome them with open arms. She became the orphanage's sunshine, always there with a beaming smile and a kind word for newcomers who felt as lost as she once had. Then, when Iris turned teenager, something magical unfolded. While other kids struggled with ordinary clay in art class, Iris's hands, those same hands others had called different, began working wonders. Where others saw limitations, she discovered a gift. Her sculptures danced between reality and dreams, part human, part animal, all glowing with colors so vibrant they looked like they'd been dipped in rainbows. One ordinary Tuesday turned extraordinary when a fancy city lady came to visit. Mrs. Duches, with her black coat and heels, owned one of the most famous art galleries downtown. When she wandered past Iris's sculptures, she froze mid-step. The sculptures really took her breath away. "My gosh," Mrs. Duches gasped, kneeling to examine the artwork. "Iris, these aren't just sculptures. They're pure magic. Each piece sings with joy about being wonderfully, gloriously different." Then came the unbelievable offer, a real art show in the city. The orphanage buzzed with excitement. Miss Kelly became Iris's personal assistant, helping her prepare. For weeks, Iris worked like a woman possessed, shaping new masterpieces by day, polishing her favorites by night, until her fingers ached, but her heart soared. The night of Iris's big show arrived, and the gallery buzzed with excitement. Bright lights shone on her exhibition. Iris Different is Beautiful, where each sculpture seemed to come alive with color and emotion. People from all walks of life came, serious art critics nodding thoughtfully, local families pointing in awe, even a famous actress discreetly wiping away tears. Iris stood beside her creations, her heart racing faster. All evening she shared her story, how the clay seemed to understand her when people didn't, how each twist and curve in her work told of loneliness turned to strength. The woman with purple-streaked hair crouched down to Iris's eye level. "Hey there, darling," she grinned. "I'm Jessie. My job? Finding faces that make people stop scrolling and stare, like yours." She tapped Iris's chin playfully. "At our agency, we celebrate what makes you unique." Those freckles, that smile, pure magic, and especially those eyes. Iris's mouth fell open. Modeling? The idea seemed as ridiculous as a goldfish riding a bicycle, but then she felt it, that warm, glowing feeling Miss Kelly always said was her inner spark. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and met Jessie's gaze. "Okay," Iris said, her voice small but steady. "Let's try." What happened next was nothing short of magical. Before she knew it, Iris was swept into wind of dazzling photo shoots. Soon her face, with all its beautiful uniqueness, graced magazine covers, her striking features challenging traditional beauty standards. But the most extraordinary part wasn't the fame. It was the flood of letters from people who saw themselves in her. "You made me stop hating my scars," wrote one teenager. "My daughter now calls her birthmark her special spot like yours," shared a grateful parent. She was a symbol of courage, proving that what makes us different is actually our greatest source of strength. On her 18th birthday, Iris stood at the orphanage gates with a suitcase in one hand and Miss Kelly's tearful smile behind her. With Miss Kelly's help, Iris found her very first apartment. Tiny? Yes. Perfect? Absolutely. For the first time, she had a space where clay-stained hands could smudge every surface. Half-finished sketches could paper the walls. Fame came with bright lights and cheering crowds, but also with darkness. One evening, while strolling through comments about her latest online magazine feature, Iris's finger froze mid-swipe. Most messages were warm. "You're stunning." This changed how I see beauty. Then, wham, like walking into a glass door. "Only monsters abandon their kids. That model's parents must be heartless." The words burned. Even after all these years, even with all her success, that old wound still had teeth. Iris couldn't shake the questions any longer. Who were her real parents? Why had they left her? The mystery gnawed at her until she made a decision. She would find answers, no matter what it took. With Miss Kelly's support, she hired Jack Money, a tough-as-nails investigator famous for solving cases others had given up on. Jack started digging right where Iris's story began, at the orphanage. He studied the faded note left with baby Iris like it held secret codes. He even checked for fingerprints, though after so many years the trail had gone cold. Undeterred, Jack widened his search. Day after day, he became a familiar face in hospital records offices, poring over birth documents from around Iris's suspected birthday. The work was tedious, endless phone calls, dead ends, and dusty file rooms, but Jack kept at it, determined to uncover Iris's origins. Then, the breakthrough. Jack's fingers froze on a faded birth certificate. The names leaped off the page. Amber and Jackson Goldwing, a baby girl born the exact week Iris was left at the orphanage. The pieces clicked. The Goldwings had vanished right after her birth, leaving no trace until now. Jack's network of sources tracked their trail, job transfers, old addresses, utility bills, until he pinned them down, a quiet house just 2 towns away. When Jack handed Iris the file, her hands shook. Inside were photos, documents, proof. Her parents were real. They were close. Miss Kelly squeezed her shoulder. "Whatever happens next, you decide." Iris took a deep breath. It was time to face the past, on her terms. Iris stood frozen on the doorstep, her heart hammering so loud she was sure they could hear it. The simple suburban house looked harmless, but behind that door was everything she'd ever wondered about. She smoothed the sleek fabric of her designer dress, a far cry from her orphanage hand-me-downs, and knocked. The door groaned open. 2 faces, older now but familiar, stared back at her. Their eyes bulged. Jaws went slack. Time stopped. "I'm Iris," she said, voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. "I think I'm your daughter." Amber swayed like a tree in a storm. Jackson's knuckles turned white on the doorknob. "This isn't possible," Amber breathed, barely audible. Jackson's throat tightened. "Come inside," he managed, voice barely above a whisper. The room felt heavy. 18 years of unspoken guilt hung between them. Family photos covered the walls, smiling vacations, birthday parties, a life built without her. Iris's throat tightened. Amber collapsed onto the couch. "What we did." Her hands twisted in her lap. "We were kids ourselves, scared, ashamed." Jackson couldn't meet Iris's eyes. "Not a day goes by we don't feel that weight." Iris felt the anger rise like a wave, then paused. In that heartbeat of silence, she remembered Miss Kelly's hugs, Mrs. Dosh's proud smiles, all the people who'd taught her what real love looked like. "I didn't come to hurt you," she said, her voice warm as morning light. "I came to show you something wonderful." With a tap of her finger, her phone screen bloomed. There she was, radiant on the cover of Vogue. There she stood, beaming beside her sculptures at gallery openings. There she knelt, hugging orphans who now saw their own beauty reflected in hers. Each image was a living testament. The daughter you thought wasn't good enough became extraordinary. Amber and Jackson stood frozen, their eyes glued to the screen. The weight of their regret pressed down like a physical force. Shoulders hunched, breaths shallow. We don't deserve your forgiveness," Jackson choked out, his voice thick with emotion, "after what we did." But Iris just smiled. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," she said softly. "It's about healing old wounds. Think of it like stitching a torn heart." She paused. "And trust me, I've done the hard work to get here." As she turned to leave, she glanced back one last time. "I have a family now, people who chose me. But if you're willing, maybe we could start fresh, get to know each other slowly." Tears streamed down Amber's cheeks as they both nodded, unable to speak. For the first time in 18 years, hope flickered between them, tiny but unshakable. As Iris stepped out of the front door, she stood taller than ever before, like a knight returning from battle. She hadn't just faced her past, she'd reclaimed it. Back in her cozy apartment, she grabbed her phone, fingers dialing the number she knew by heart. "Well?" Miss Kelly's voice wrapped around her like a favorite blanket. "How's my brave girl?" Iris let the happy tears flow freely. It was perfect, messy, real. Just like you always taught me life would be. She wiped her cheeks. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." A rich chuckle filled the line. "Oh, sweetheart, you got it backwards. You're the one who taught us that different isn't broken, that scars can sparkle." Before you go, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone and made up your mind about them before they even spoke a word? If this tale of courage and kindness moved you, smash that like button. It helps others find this inspiration. Subscribe for more stories that change how we see the world. Thank you for watching.